Hey, what's up? Hello everyone, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and today we are continuing our mid-year Oscar predictions, this time diving into the craft categories. But craft nominations all along the awards path are very important into getting your film into the Best Picture race and awards season as a whole. And speaking of awards season, here on the channel we have a little game involving all of awards season, not just the Oscars. So Matt, tell everyone out there how they can get involved.
Well, we play a game called Fantasy Filmball, and you can join in. The way the game works is you draft a team of 10 films that collect points through the awards season, through Metacritic score, box office, and of course, winning and being nominated for different awards. As the season goes on, your team of films will collect points, and as the Oscars come around, one team in every single league will be crowned the winner. It's a great game. It is so much fun to play, and you can join by joining our Discord down in the description box down below and going to the League Placements channel. You can sign up for this game all the way up until August 15th. So join in if you're an awards junkie like us, which I assume you are if you're here watching an awards prediction video about the song, score, costume design categories. You probably like the awards. Join our league. It's a lot of fun, and we hope to see you there. But before that, I do want to say we heard some good feedback last week, which said that we could dive a little bit deeper, and I want to let y'all know we take feedback to heart. Let us know if you have any suggestions, any feedback, always. But to dive a little bit deeper, I think it's important to know week by week, because we're releasing these predictions literally every single week, what's changing in the Oscar race. It might look from the outside like, oh my god, they're putting out too many predictions, but things change every single week. First thing that I want to talk about is the moves that are being affected by the strike. First of all, this past week, Drive Away Dolls was moved out of 2023, so that's not here anymore. As far as I know, the only official moves that we've gotten are Challengers and Drive Away Dolls at this point.
I think those are the only moves going to next year. We've had some moves within the year as a whole. Poor Things moved to a much better release date in terms of its awards prospects into late December, as well as some other little things here and there, but I think that's all that has officially moved at the time of recording to next year. But on the reverse side of moves, we have some official release dates for some pretty big Oscar contenders, more specifically from Netflix themselves. So Matt, do you want to go over some of these Netflix release dates?
Yes, Netflix is so interesting because we don't know what Netflix's push is going to be until the films premiere at TIFF. They always have so many movies on their release schedule, and we don't know what's going to be big. So we might have some hints now. Maestro has a December 20th streaming release, which means it'll probably be in theaters like December 6th or so, something like that. December 6th, probably. May December has December 1st, which means it's going to be mid-November release. Rustin has November 17th. That means it's likely beginning of November. The Killer, November 10th on Netflix, which means that's a likely late October release. Naiad is November 3rd, also like mid to late October there, and then Pain Hustlers, end of October. So those are the slate for Netflix. What we can learn from this is looking at previous years when those movies have released on Netflix. For example, Roma was like, I think mid-December. The Irishman was mid-November. Marriage Story was, I think, early December that year. So typically we're seeing the award season movies being like late November to early December, which means I'm a little bit more hesitant on Naiad. I'm a little bit more hesitant on The Killer. It's looking stronger for May, December. It's looking stronger for Maestro. Also, worth noting, last year, All Quiet on the Western Front had a Netflix release of October 28th, but it seems like they didn't think that was going to be a player, and then it just ended up being.
More we saw last year with Glass Onion. It had the Christmas Day release. kind of similar to what Maestro had here. Also, Don't Look Up had a release date around that time as well. So it's surprising that Maestro would go there and not May, December. In terms, I guess Maestro makes more sense for the populist movie, but in terms of how the movie seemed, like in terms of like the tone, May, December fits that a little bit better. But as you mentioned, the Best Picture nominees from Netflix here recently have come in that late November, early December release dates, and that's currently where May, December is, and that is the one that I've been saying will be Netflix's representative this year in the Best Picture line. So it kind of makes me feel a little bit better about that one.
We also have gotten the Venice Film Festival lineup, as well as about 50% of the TIFF lineup. So let's talk about a few films that are standing out there, but not all of them, because I'll be going to TIFF, which means I'm going to be doing a full video when the full TIFF schedule releases about everything at TIFF, what I'll be seeing, what I'm most looking forward to, but some movies that are worth taking note of. The Boy and the Heron, Hayao Miyazaki's new movie, is the opening night film of TIFF. Now, TIFF opening nights are typically shit. They're typically not good, but I think the fact that we have this as an opening night film for Miyazaki, having heard the good reviews about it, I think it means that TIFF is putting it on a pedestal. They're putting it as something to watch, something to really take note of. And I think that could really impact it in the Oscar race. When it comes to getting some critic awards, when it comes to getting some above-the-line stuff, we know that they're not just going to dump it in theaters. They are doing a festival rollout for this, which my biggest worry with this movie was that they were going to do the Japanese strategy and just put it out in theaters with no warning, no trailer, no nothing, no advanced talk about it. I'm really happy that it has this opening slot. It means that it's going to be a widely talked about movie, and that means Miyazaki could make his way into some above-the-line categories, such as director or screenplay, which would be great to see. And on the Venice side, Ferrari has been announced in the competition lineup. We've both been very low on Ferrari this year, mostly because I think that we know what Adam Driver's going to do with this movie. He did an Italian accent in House of Gucci, and it was awful, and I don't expect him to be much better in Ferrari, if I'm going to be honest. But the fact that it's in Venice competition means maybe I'm not giving this one enough credit. That said, last year Venice competition had The Whale, The Sun, and Blonde, all of which were not good, but two of which still got Oscar nominations. What do you think about Ferrari now that it's in the Venice lineup?
I mean, I've had it a lot higher than you throughout the year. It's been my Best Picture top 25 to 20-ish range all year, and I've had it in and out of my sound and editing lineups as my number 5 slot. But I don't know. I feel like we still need reactions before we can throw Adam Driver into the 10, let alone the 5 for Best Actor, just because of how stacked that lineup is this year. Because we do these monthly predictions where we have our 10. You may not see everything that's below that number 10 line, but for me, he's been 12, 13 most weeks, just because we have a very strong top 7 now, top 6 after the most likely delay, after the most likely confirmation that Bob Marley is not coming out until next year. So I don't know, he can creep his way into my 10, but it's going to take a lot for him to get into my top 5.
Everything about Ferrari screams disaster to me. It's like a $90 million movie that couldn't find a distributor for the longest time. Yes, Neon has it now, but everything about it feels bad. It feels like it's going down the drain. I don't know. That's, I guess, just how I have felt about Ferrari for a while. But on the other hand, there was one big surprise in Venice's lineup, which is Ava DuVernay's new film, Origin. I don't know anything about this. I want to learn a little bit more, but it's one that I'm going to be watching out for from Venice. And finally, I'm just going to mention 3 films in the TIFF lineup that I think could end up being Oscar contenders, but I don't know enough about at this point. I would want to see reviews from to put them higher up in my lineup. And that would be The Royal Hotel, which is the new film from Kitty Green, who did The Assistant a few years ago. This one has Julia Gardner in it, and it's like a survival movie across Australia, if I'm understanding correctly. Sounds very interesting. It's playing Telluride and TIFF, which very few movies seem to be doing this year. That could be worth mentioning as well, because Neon is distributing it. And then 2 other movies, American Fiction, stars Jeffrey Wright. It's written and directed in the directorial debut of Cord Jefferson, who is someone who's written on a lot of TV shows. He was one of the writers on the Watchmen series and directors, I believe. And the Watchmen is one of my favorite shows of all time. This one has a great concept. It's based on a very interesting sounding book. So it's one I'm going to be watching out for at TIFF, and I could see it being a massive festival breakout in the same way that Moonlight was years and years ago, when we didn't expect that to be a huge Best Picture contender, and then bam, there it was. And then finally, Close to You, which is a Canadian movie starring Elliot Page in the lead role. I think Elliot Page could be someone who ends up making his way into the Best Actor conversation for this film, being one of the, if not the first trans actor to be nominated for the Oscars. So those three films I'm watching for at TIFF, and I could really see them go either way, being either massive successes or movies that kind of just come and go.
Definitely. I think American Fiction is the one that speaks the most to me, just based off of everything that you said here, as well as other people online. But with TIFF, as you mentioned, there's sometimes diamonds in the rough, and there's also sometimes...
Finally, the last thing we'll mention here, Barbenheimer keeps growing. It's got exceptional legs, which means these movies are not going anywhere. They are going to be some of the biggest box office hits of the year. They're going to be what Top Gun was last year. So Barbenheimer, let's watch it continue to run. Good for those movies, and those will be reflected in our predictions. So let's move right into those. Dylan, you're going to be taking original score, so take it away.
Yep, I don't have much movement here on my original score ladder. I still have Killers of the Flower Moon at number 1. I know the clamor online for Oppenheimer. I do love the Oppenheimer score. Ludwig Göransson's one of my favorite, if not my favorite composer out there. It's just I don't see them giving him number 2 so soon. And I think he's going to be here throughout the majority of the season. He's going to be that number 2 all year long. I just don't see the Oscars giving him number 2 so quick. I have Past Lives at 3, Zone of Interest at 4. Those are two ones where I don't think will ever be in the win contention, but we've heard good things about Zone of Interest score. We've heard the Past Lives score, and if they're both picture players, they need some below-the-line technical love. And then I do have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as my 5 slot. I don't feel great about it at the moment. However, it is staying here just because I feel like this movie is going to get some love outside of its category. I just don't think the love is going to come above the line.
I would say Oppenheimer's winning this category. I haven't heard anyone talk about Killers of the Flower Moon score at all. I don't think that's going to change. I'm feeling less confident in Past Lives. I'm only giving it nominations in like 3 categories at the moment, so I don't think score comes along with it. But like you said, Zone of Interest seems very strong. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, very, very strong. Less strong than before because Barbie is taking over as that sort of populist pick. Can Barbie and Spider-Verse coexist? I'm not too sure, but it doesn't have any competition in this category. So maybe if the universe is just, maybe it gets in here. Or maybe it has the sequel curse and it doesn't get nominated here. Just like your number 6, which a lot of people are going to come at you for. But I'm proud of you, Dylan. I'm proud that you've taken my advice and you have Dune Part 2 at number 6 in original score.
Yeah, I really want to have Dune Part 2 in my top 5. Just, I've heard what you've said here the last few months at this point, and I have it just out. I moved it out for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which I don't feel great about having it either. I've gone on record here multiple times talking about how the Academy doesn't really like Daniel Pemberton, and he's had multiple scores that have been in the conversation, receiving numerous precursors while missing at the end of the day. So it could happen here again with Across the Spider-Verse, especially if it's not an above-the-line contender. Just like I mentioned before, I feel like some love will push that one over. The score sounds great in the trailers for Dune, though, so I wouldn't be surprised if that could break the trend and muster its way. And I have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny still hanging around at number 7. It was one of the highlights of the movie for most people, as well as being John Williams and his potential last score. I know we talked about that last year at Fabelmans. He still got his way into the conversation there. Just Fabelmans was a Best Picture frontrunner for a time. Dial of Destiny probably is getting 0 or maybe 1 other nomination. And then just rattling off my next in line, we have The Killer, we have Poor Things, we have The Boy and the Heron. 3 films that I feel like could have very interesting and ear-catching scores. It's just, will the branch love them as much as some of the films I have above, like Dune, like Spider-Verse, like Zone of Interest, Past Lives? Who really knows? And some scores that have dropped off my list here in the last couple of weeks have been Wonka and Elemental. They're two ones where it kind of makes sense, but if Elemental is not winning the animated feature, I don't see them bringing the score into another category. And then Wonka's trailer really didn't focus much on the score, so for me, it kind of dropped the buzz there with it.
Fair enough. My sleeper pick here, I think Poor Things, which you have at number 9, can really, really climb as the months go on. I think that score is going to be... I've come around on the score. I think it's going to be really exceptional, especially I saw the trailer in theaters with my fiance, and she said, that movie looks awful, but the music sounds really cool. So that was an interesting reaction. So maybe this music could have universal appeal. But yes, let's move on to the next category, original song. You've got quite the lineup here, so jump right on in.
It's basically all over the place, but I do have Wish at number 1. I know you've talked about... I know that you have talked about this on the channel before. The song's out there on YouTube. Go listen to it. Ariana DeBose, she's already won an Oscar. We know that the Academy loves her. We all love her, so... go for it. Disney songs too, that's also another plus. And then at my number 2 slot, for some reason, if Wish gets pushed or just isn't as strong for some reason, then The Color Purple is slotted at number 2 with the new song that the original writers are bringing to the table. I'm assuming it's in the actual movie, not a credit song, so that could give it some extra weight to get into the conversation here. We've seen in the past that these songs sometimes don't win, but they're usually nominated if the movie is a Best Picture player. Think back to Les Mis. And then at number 3, I have the Billie Eilish song from Barbie, What Was I Made For? This makes sense to win on paper, but just like Score of Ludwig, I don't see them giving Billie a second one so soon. I know the Grammys did it, but the Grammys are, a little bit different. And the Oscars seem like they would want to spread the love a little bit, and especially if there's other big songs out there, like from potentially Wish or The Color Purple. Some votes could go over there, but I may eat my words once we get later in the season and Billie Eilish just sweeping the season just again like she did for No Time to Die. At number 4, maybe this is a Hope Diction, maybe it's not. I still have For the First Time from The Little Mermaid in my top 5. And then my number 5 slot is just a Diane Warren song. Take your pick. 80 for Brady, Something Else. Who really knows? It's probably the one from the documentary about her, but we don't have a title for that yet. So I'm just making this the official Diane Warren slot until proven wrong.
I like that. The official Diane Warren spot. Could be 80 for Brady, could be the other one. Okay, I guess going back to the Billie Eilish track for Barbie, it's a surefire nomination, but I believe we talked about this a little bit last year when we were talking about song with Gaga and with Rihanna. Pop singers don't win Oscars for singing pop songs, which was kind of the holdup for Hold My Hand last year from Gaga. Ultimately, Naatu Naatu was just a juggernaut that could not be defeated, but Gaga never really stood a chance for that. It does feel ballady enough that it could win. It's not too poppy. It's not a typical Billie Eilish song, but pop singers struggle to win 2 Oscars. It's just statistically been a thing. And across the Spider-Verse, I have heard your theory where you say everyone comes out of that movie with a different song as their memorable song. But that's not how the voting goes. They're going to submit 1 or 2 songs. They'll submit 1 song if they're really smart, and they'll pick 1 song and ride with it through the season. I really think that you should give it more credit. If they have 1 song to choose from Spider-Verse, it's going to be in there.
I mean, I agree. They're going to submit 1 or 2 songs. I just don't think any of the songs are going to catch on, is my thing, is because none of them are standing out to people. I know they're standing out to people our age, but they're not standing out to a lot of the older critics out there who make up the majority of the Academy so far. When they're having their reviews, they're not really pointing to the songs. They're pointing to the score, where I think is where the love for Spider-Verse could come in one of these musical categories. And I'm just kidding from Barbie. I would love to see this nominated. I think it's very fun. I do like this song outside the movie as well. We've seen the memes online. This would be the meme song of the year, not the one from Mario, the Peaches Jack Black song, because this one's actually a song. But I just don't see Barbie getting 2 in without something, unless Barbie becomes like a Best Picture frontrunner, which it easily could. I'm not denying that at this moment. It's proving everyone wrong in terms of box office, in terms of awards, in terms of critics, audience scores, everything is just climbing up the ladder. I just feel like if they're smart, they're probably going to put all their chips behind the Billie Eilish song, which even here, as we're saying, it probably won't win, but easily is probably the number 2 song in terms of just the ladder, just not the winning ladder.
All right, costume design. We know what's winning. Surprise, surprise! It's Barbie time, bitches. Barbie is running away with this prize. If there's one award this wins, it's costume design. It's just undeniable. The costumes in this are the star of the show outside of the production design. Yeah, if Barbie's a huge Best Picture player, it wins costume design. If Barbie's not a huge Best Picture player, it still wins costume design. I don't know what else to tell you. It just is what it is. After that, I'm going to follow it up with two more Warner Brothers movies, The Color Purple and Dune Part 2. Look, these two could get pushed. If they don't get pushed, they're both in here. They've got great costume design. Yeah, I don't know what to say here. I think they're both very strong in this category. They look very unique, very distinct, but they're not win contenders. Then at number 4, Poor Things. This one has great costume design from the trailers that we've seen, but it again doesn't look like it can topple Barbie. And the costumes are a little bit less big and expansive than they were in The Favorite, and The Favorite was almost a winner in its year. It lost to Black Panther. Yeah, this looks smaller scale than The Favorite for sure. Then, at number 5, I'm fighting between 3 different movies. I want to hear what you think after I rattle off these 3, and I want to know where you'd go with this, because I've got Wonka at number 5, Killers of the Flower Moon at number 6, and Priscilla at number 7.
I would also include Napoleon into that bunch of these 4 movies, 1 spot, give or take, unless Warner Brothers does some pushes. I think you could go no wrong with either of them. I'm warming more up to Priscilla in terms of technical. I still don't think this would be an above-the-line contender, but I could see costumes break it in for a sole costume design nomination. It's been in my 10 all year. It just hasn't been in my 5. Then the case for, I guess, Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon would be the same thing. It's going to be a lot of costumes. There'll be some uniforms for Napoleon. There'll be some more indigenous costumes for Killers of the Flower Moon. But right at this moment, I'm leaning towards Wonka. I do actually have Wonka above Color Purple. Color Purple is my 5 slot at the moment. I have Wonka in just because from the trailer, it's very eye-popping. It's very catching. It fits into a period costume, even though it's not really a period costume, as well as we can look to the past. Most Willy Wonka movies at least get in here, if not in other spots. While I think this one could be a goose egg 0, at the moment, I still do have it in for costumes, but I don't think you could go wrong if you have Priscilla, if you have Killers of the Flower Moon, or even Napoleon as your number 5 over it.
To be fair, there's not a big sample size of most Willy Wonka movies. This is like the
There's
third
3.
one, I think.
There's 3.
Yeah, I can see that. I have it at my number 5 because it's Victorian, and I'm seeing the trajectory of Wonka being very similar to Mary Poppins Returns. Now, to finish off my lineup, I'll just rattle off some more right here. Asteroid City could be a big one. The costume design is great in this movie, and if Asteroid City has a bit of a resurgence at the end of the year with tech nominations, maybe this comes along. I mean, The French Dispatch, it wasn't out of the question for that movie, so, it wasn't out of the question for that movie, but I'm going to be honest, if Asteroid City picks up 1 tech nomination, it's not going to be costume design. It would probably be production design. Then, also worth mentioning, Maestro. We haven't seen much from this movie, so I can't speak too much to what the costumes are doing or how big they are, but that said, it is a mid-20th century set biopic. I can't imagine that the costumes are going to be too extravagant or really out there from this, so I'm not going to say it's a nomination. Some other possibilities here: The Killer has trench coats, fedoras, a lot of just like very 60s neo-noir aesthetics to it. That could be a great costume design nomination, but I want to see more from it before I say whether or not it will be. Ferrari has great suits, sunglasses. I believe the movie is being styled by a big Italian fashion house.
Yeah, I think Chevalier would be one that's more in the conversation if it had a more well-known costume designer. As we talked about when the movie came out in that review, we both love the costume work there. It's just that designer has not really had his name on the map for very long. So this is a great introduction to a lot of people, but may not be enough to break him into the conversation, especially considering that movie came out so long ago once nominations will come out. But as you mentioned, Barbie's winning costumes. I also think it's winning production design because that is my number one over there. Following that up with another Warner Brothers feature, that is Dune Part 2. This is one where I think it will lose from the first movie, but I mean, Barbie, we've seen it. It looks beautiful. It's great. I know there's a lot of concerns going into the movie. How much will be in Barbie Land compared to the real world? And I mean, I would say the majority of the movie takes place in Barbie Land. So the most grandness of the production design is on screen for the longer amount of time, and I think that's enough not just for a nomination but for a win. Rounding out my 5, we have Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things, and at the moment I do have Oppenheimer getting in here. I don't feel great about it because it does need a miss in some places. It cannot hit every nomination across the board, but if this is going to be our nominations leader, our most beloved film, it's currently my Best Picture winner. I need to pick up most of these nominations down the line. I think production design will be a sign of the goodwill for this movie going further outside of just above the line in some of the main tech categories that's going to win.
I would have Killers and Oppenheimer fighting for the same slot in this because I think they're going to both kind of hit on similar things, and similar voters would pick these. I don't think both can make it in, if I'm going to be honest, and I have Killers out at the moment. So, Poor Things, though, that's a great pick. If Barbie wasn't here, that would be winning. And like you said, we've been discounting Barbie a little bit all year long because we kept thinking Barbie is going to be mostly in the real world and Barbie Land's just going to be a small part of it. Nope. Barbie Land is most of it, which means it's winning. It's winning. I feel like it's undeniable. I can't say it's a lock because we haven't seen Dune or Poor Things, but it seems pretty close to a damn lock at this point. I like your top 5. What do you got after?
So following that up, I have the Zone of Interest at number 6. While I know they do not show Auschwitz itself, just the surrounding areas, they could do some interesting things with that, and we've heard some reviews out there. I just don't think it's strong enough to make its way into the top 5. We have The Color Purple because I have to have that film miss somewhere if I don't have it in my Best Picture top 3, top 4. Then we have Wonka, Napoleon, Asteroid City, other movies that I feel like will have very eye-popping production design. Just I think their lack of love above the line could hurt them in this category, especially considering at the moment I do have all 5 of my production design nominees in Best Picture, and then my number 6 and 7 are also Best Picture nominees.
Mm-hmm. Zone of Interest is a little bit too high, I'd say, because it's very experimental. I don't know if it's going to click with production designers the same way that it'll click with, for example, like the sound branch, which is traditionally very cool. The production design branch, traditionally a little less cool, I'd say. They don't do as many cool nominations as the sound branch does. Now, some movies that are on the outside of your list that I want to ask you about, what do you think about The Killer, Priscilla, and Maestro? Is there anything, those are the ones that seem like possibilities that aren't on your list. What do you think about those?
Yeah, The Killer would be number 11. It's just outside looking in. If Netflix makes it known, or once we have reviews out of Venice that this is going to be a very technical heavy movie, it could work its way in. Maestro, on the other hand, I'm not entirely for sure. Like, I get the angle, but also doesn't scream as eye-catching to me, at least on paper. But I think more of that love will go over to cinematography and to production design. And Priscilla would make sense. It's just like costumes, I can make sense differentiating itself from Elvis, but in terms of production design, I just feel like this movie needs to be more of an above-the-line player to kind of break into that category.
The complaint with Priscilla that I've heard is that the Elvis estate has said that it looks nothing like Graceland and that the production design is way off. But that just might be the Elvis estate being like, we don't like that this movie criticizes Elvis. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's it. But I would take the criticisms of accuracy seriously for Priscilla. So I agree with you that Priscilla is not top 10 for production design, but I'd say it's just outside of it. It would be possible, but it's not as strong as costume design, for example, especially if Priscilla actually isn't an accurate depiction of what Graceland looks like. People are going to know, and they're not going to like it.
So, kick us off of our final category of the day, Best Makeup and Hairstyling.
Best makeup and hair. All right, let's blast through this. Now, I have a 2-horse race for my win here. I don't know what's going to win, but I've got arguments for both, and the 2-horse race is between Dune Part 2 and Maestro. Currently, I'm leaning Dune Part 2, and the reason for that is Austin Butler's bald-ass head. It looks wild. What is he doing with his bald-ass head? It's a bald-ass head. I'm just going to keep saying that. It's just fun. Austin Butler looks crazy in this, and so does everyone else. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård is doing some stuff. The Fremen have very interesting makeup from what we're seeing in the trailers. Honestly, this movie just looks like it's going bigger in that department. It's Dune is not going to win everything it won last time, but it could win something it didn't win, which is makeup. But if it loses again, it's going to lose to something like it did last time. It lost to The Eyes of Tammy Faye doing biopic makeup last time, and it could lose to Maestro doing biopic makeup this time. Maestro is the runner-up at this moment. I'd say you could call it the number one. If you think Bradley Cooper's winning Best Actor, you should have Maestro winning Best Makeup and Hair. If you don't have Bradley Cooper winning, well, then you shouldn't have Maestro winning either.
But at the same top two, and honestly, I have the same 4 out of your 5. And the last one of my 5 that's a little bit higher is your number 6.
Well, let's go through them right now. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Poor Things, I think both could be win contenders. Guardians of the Galaxy because there is so much makeup in this movie, but it is a Marvel property. Marvel is not doing well right now. People are turning against Marvel left, right, and center. But the makeup in this movie is some of the best that I've ever seen. This is likely to be one of my favorites in this category for the rest of the year. The makeup on Other Earth, I think it was called, is exceptional with turning everyone into these kind of furry creatures. Loved that. The work on the Guardians themselves is also great. As usual, Nebula, Gamora, they look fantastic. Also, the High Evolutionary, magnificent makeup work. So that one could be win competitive, as could Poor Things. We keep seeing more and more photos of Willem Dafoe's disfigured, disgusting face in this. My lord, he looks so good in this movie. I mean, he doesn't look good, but that's the point. He looks good by not looking good. Also, the way that they're doing Emma Stone's hair and makeup to make her look much more childish is very interesting and could be a really cool angle if this gets shortlisted for them to talk about in the Makeup Bake-Off where they present what they did. That could be a really cool thing. Not only did we do Willem Dafoe, but look at Emma Stone. Look at how we transformed her into a much younger figure. And finally, at number 5, this might be a controversial pick, but I have Oppenheimer here. And the reason being the age work in this film. There's so much aging on everyone. Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy, Benny Safdie. We see everyone in various stages of their life. Plus, the excellent hair work that's done on Robert Downey Jr., as well as aging. The hair work on Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, again, Benny Safdie. It just looks like he has a block of oil on his head. There's so much going on in this movie in terms of the makeup and hair, and if this is a major contender, then I do think we should take it seriously in makeup because there is so much makeup. Now, Barbie is your pick in this category, and the reason I don't have Barbie in is that outside of the work done on Weird Barbie with the crayon on her face, there's not a lot of makeup in this movie. It's all hair. And I know in the past you've said that movies can get nominated on hair but not win on hair. I don't think movies can get nominated on hair. This is the makeup and hair branch. Makeup and hair, not makeup and hair. It's hair gets shafted in this category year after year. If we look back at previous years and see which movies might have been nominated just on hair, there's not that many. So looking back, last year, I guess you could argue Black Panther Wakanda Forever got nominated on the hair because there was so much going on with the hair. The hair work was beautiful in that. But I would say also you could make the argument that it was the makeup work in that movie. It wasn't just hair. There was makeup as well. The year beforehand, I guess you could say House of Gucci might have been a hair only. No, it wasn't, because Jared Leto was the... Ignore me. So the year before, 2021, there were no hair only nominees. Eyes of Tammy Faye, Coming to America, Cruella, Dune, House of Gucci. None of those are hair. They're all makeup. 2020, 2021, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, that's the fat suit. Emma, I guess you could say that was more of a hair nomination than anything. Hillbilly Elegy, fat suit, Glenn Close. Mank, I don't know what that nomination is. I don't think it's hair, though. And Pinocchio, that was makeup. Looking back year after year, I'm seeing more makeup than hair. I'm not really seeing any hair nominations in any of these. They're always prosthetics. They're always about the suits. So I don't see an argument for Barbie because I don't see anything that's just a hair nomination except for Emma in 2020.
I would consider Mick and Cruella both to be more hair than to be makeup because especially for Cruella, it's more of her hairstyle. I know she has a little makeup work around her eyes, but it's a lot of various different hairstyles. And then you go over to Mick, and I think it's a lot of the older Hollywood styles. And while Barbie's not really doing either of those, I just think Barbie's going to be such a strong contender and how iconic the hair pieces are to match for the various amounts of Barbies and Kens in this movie. I think it could slide in at a number 5. Unless something like an Oppenheimer, as you mentioned, is just so strong as well, a color purple, or something that we're just completely not even thinking of at this moment can just muster its way into the conversation. Just looking at our field currently here in the early parts of August, I think that Barbie has a good case to be that number 4, number 5 movie.
Afterwards, I'll rattle off some more. Napoleon, there's some great work on Joaquin Phoenix's face. Everyone looks disgusting and unwashed. That could be a great angle for makeup and hair, especially when we get to that bake-off phase. They could say, look at how we made everyone look like they haven't taken a shower in 3 years. That could be a great angle for this movie. After that, Wonka, I am not convinced by after seeing Hugh Grant as the Oompa Loompa, but that would be the angle for it. It would be Hugh Grant in the film. As well, The Little Mermaid, I don't think will make it in because of the digital enhancements that are done for the hair as well as for the makeup. But Ursula, Melissa McCarthy's makeup work that she does for that character, that could be enough to get it onto the shortlist, but probably not for a nomination. Finally, the last of my 10 is Beau is Afraid, which is a bit of a wild pick here, but there's so much makeup work to transform Joaquin Phoenix in this, as well as creating things like the giant penis monster, as well as there's so many characters that have great makeup work done on them through the film, especially the people on the street in the beginning. I think back to last year how Crimes of the Future was shortlisted, and that was shortlisted for some of the creatures and some of the weird oddities on there. Beau is Afraid has the exact same narrative that Crimes of the Future had.
I guess for Color Purple, that would be another case of the hair powering yourself through into the nomination because I think they would be doing a lot of very interesting, very impressive things with the various characters they had and the different hairstyles and hairstyles that you often don't get to see in film, but you can go back to Dolomite Is My Name, and it's the same case there, and they snubbed that one. And then I guess the very last point to make would be Beau is Afraid. I think that's a great shout there. A movie that we'll be talking about very shortly here on the channel, Talk to Me, I think has some very impressive prosthetics and makeup use in that film. So that could be another little shout for a possible Crimes of the Future shortlist type thing, but I don't know if that movie will be on enough people's radar to get in there. But if it is on your radar, come back here, drop a like, drop a subscription, because we're going to have a review of Talk to Me coming soon, as well as more Oscar predictions with each and every week. But until then, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.